There's a troubling report of a shooting outside a mosque in the borough of Queens in New York City. An imam walking home from afternoon prayers and a second man, we're told, were gunned down by a lone shooter, and witnesses call a targeted attack. Police, though, at this time are not calling it a hate crime and say one report says that the authorities are claiming it was a robbery gone bad. Well, the gunshots rang out near a mosque in the neighborhood of Ozone Park, Queens, leaving both victims lying on the ground in their own blood, according to witnesses. Authorities say the injuries are life-threatening. The imam reportedly shot in the head, the other in the chest. Witnesses say that shooter was wearing a dark blue shirt and had a large handgun and fled the scene. Police, as of this moment, are not releasing any identities of those victims. We will bring you more details as soon as we get them.
And hello, everyone. I'm Arthel Neville. Welcome to a brand new hour inside America's election headquarters.
Hi, Arthel. Good to be with you. And I'm Eric Shawn. Topping the news this hour, Donald Trump, while refusing to back down from those controversial remarks that President Obama is the founder of ISIS, though he said he was being sarcastic. This, of course, comes as he comes under more scrutiny over some of those new claims that if he loses Pennsylvania, he says it's because the election will be fixed.
Plus, multiple reports of gunshots fired inside a mall in Raleigh, North Carolina. Police and emergency personnel responding to the scene right now. We've got the latest on what's happening there.
And there are growing concerns this afternoon over the quality of the water at the Summer Games in Rio. Now, there were reports that at least one athlete has already fallen ill to the heavy pollution there. Would you want to swim in that?
Donald Trump fundraising in East Hampton, New York today before heading off to a rally in Connecticut. The Republican nominee generating more controversy after saying the only way he will lose in Pennsylvania if there is, quote, cheating going on. It comes as Mr. Trump continues to face backlash over his comments, calling President Obama the founder of ISIS. The real estate mogul has sort of walked back that claim yesterday, telling supporters he was being sarcastic, but not that sarcastic. Trump trying to further explain himself last night.
Everybody knew exactly what I meant. Well, actually, that's been covered, I think, pretty well. I think they really, when look, we should have never been in Iraq. I was against going into Iraq. It was a big mistake. But when he took it over, the way he got out was horrible, horrible. And it really led to the formation, the real formation of ISIS as we know it.
Peter Ducey joins us live from Fairfield, Connecticut. So, Peter, this is where Mr. Trump will hold a rally this evening, yeah?
It is just about 2.5 hours from right now. So far today, though, the only thing Donald Trump has talked about is a New York Times article that's getting some buzz online that he really doesn't like. The article basically cites unnamed sources as saying that behind the scenes, Trump is difficult to keep on message and that he is getting scared about possibly losing in November. Trump's response to that is that the New York Times has become a fictional article, and he also tweets that, quote, I am truly enjoying myself while running for president. The people of our country are amazing. Great numbers on November 8th. And the campaign isn't just dissing and dismissing, really, the New York Times. They're also downplaying the importance of Hillary Clinton releasing her tax returns yesterday, with communications director Jason Miller saying that, quote, Hillary Clinton has turned over the only records nobody wants to see from her. The American public wants to see the 33,000 emails she deleted to obstruct an FBI investigation. And there is also a new push by the Trump campaign now to get supporters to sign up as election observers. Their website says they need volunteers to stop Clinton from rigging the election. And Democratic rule breaking is something Trump is spending a lot of time talking about on the trail right now, because the way Trump sees it, big crowds should equal big voter turnout. So he thinks the only way Clinton can beat him in the Keystone State, where he was yesterday, is by scamming the system.
Is everybody here voting? If you do that, we're not going to lose. The only way we can lose, in my opinion, I really mean this, Pennsylvania, is if cheating goes on. I really believe it. Because I looked at Erie, and it was the same thing as this. And I've been all over the state, and I know the state well.
And the RNC chairman Reince Priebus warmed up the crowd for Trump at both events in Pennsylvania yesterday, telling swing state voters not to believe garbage that they read or hear about a strain between party brass and campaign officials. Today, though, another day, another rally, another state. It's Connecticut, which hasn't gone red in a presidential election since 1988, almost 3 decades ago. But as you can see behind us, there are a lot of people here who want to hear what he has to say, and the room is still filling up.
Okay, Peter Ducey. Thanks, Peter. And by the way, this Tuesday, don't miss the Sean Hannity special, a town hall with Donald Trump called Trump on Terra. That's Tuesday, right here on the Fox News channel.
Well, meanwhile, Hillary Clinton releasing her 2015 tax returns as her campaign says Donald Trump should do the same. Mrs. Clinton and her husband made about $10 million last year and paid a federal tax rate of about 34%. Meanwhile, earlier today, Mrs. Clinton's running mate, Senator Tim Kaine, attacked Donald Trump for not releasing his tax returns.
Even Richard Nixon released his tax returns to the public when he was running for president because he said, as has every major party nominee of both parties since, the American public have a right to see my tax returns. The rules that apply to everybody else do not apply to Donald J. Trump. He brags about all this stuff he's done for charity, but there's been some good articles to suggest that's all brags and it's not really backed up.
For more on this, Brian Ennis is live in the New York City newsroom with details on the taxes tiff. Hi, Brian.
Hi, Eric. Well, what is he trying to hide? That's the question being posed by Hillary Clinton and running mate Tim Kaine about Donald Trump and his refusal to release his personal tax returns. Virginia Senator Tim Kaine spoke at St. Anselm College in New Hampshire earlier today, where he drove home the point that if President Richard Nixon, who, quote, isn't the greatest example of ethical standards, can release his tax returns, why can't Trump? Polls show both candidates are not seen as honest or trustworthy by the majority of the American public. The Clinton campaign believes transparency can help change minds. They point out the Clintons have had really 40 years of their tax returns out there for the public to see, while Tim Kaine released 10 years of tax returns yesterday for good measure. Now, the Clintons' earnings put them at the top 10% of the 1% of Americans in 2015. They paid a federal tax rate of 34.2% and gave more than $1 million to charity. Kaine and his wife brought home a more modest $313,000. The Trump camp, though, isn't talking taxes. They keep pointing to Clinton's email controversy. Well, last night in Las Vegas, former President Bill Clinton downplayed the email controversy, saying the notion that his wife sent emails marked classified from her private server at the time is, quote, bull.
The FBI director said when he testified before Congress, he had to amend his previous day's statement that she had never received any emails marked classified. They saw 2 little notes with a C on it. This is the biggest load of bull I ever heard.
As Fox News first reported in June, the FBI found 3 emails marked classified at the time they were sent from Clinton's private server. Eric?
All right, Brian, thanks so much.
Yep.
Well, meanwhile, the Obama administration reportedly is debating whether or not to release Mrs. Clinton's interview with the FBI. You know, the interview that lasted for more than 3 hours but wasn't under oath. Well, this after Republican lawmakers asked for the Bureau to turn over the official report on that interview about her private email server. Well, during congressional testimony last month, FBI Director James Comey, he promised to respond promptly to the lawmakers' requests for the interview summaries, but apparently some government officials are now raising concerns about giving lawmakers what they consider politically sensitive records, so we'll see how that will play out.
Well, a slow-moving storm system slammed South Louisiana, causing record rainfall and leaving at least 2 people dead. Crews responding to 1,000 rescue calls, helping people escape homes and cars engulfed by high water. One dramatic rescue caught on camera. Let's take a look in.
Come on. Sit down.
Wow, I'm glad they got him. Will Carr is live from our Dallas bureau with more on this story. Will?
Hey there, Arthel. Louisiana is in a state of emergency tonight as this has become a historic disaster. There are neighborhoods that have never seen floodwaters before that are now surrounded by these waters. Cars have been swept away. Roads and interstates shut down. Some areas have received so much rain so quickly that residents became trapped and had to be rescued by boats and by helicopters. Others had to wade out of their neighborhoods. The National Guard, the Coast Guard, local authorities, and people with private boats all coming together to pull anybody and everybody out of the water like you just saw in that video. Take a listen to Governor John Bel Edwards.
As of right now, well over 1,000 people rescued, not just from their homes, but from their vehicles. Some people not even from their vehicles. They've been clinging to trees and other things like this in swift-moving floodwaters. We've also rescued more than 100 pets at this point.
We've also seen cemeteries that have flooded, coffins were unearthed and then seen floating downstream. And this has impacted the governor on a personal level as well. Overnight, the governor's mansion flooded. His family had to evacuate. It comes at the same time that he's continuing to warn residents in Louisiana about the next 36 hours. They're expecting a lot more rain. They're expecting rivers to crest at historic levels. And the governor continues to say that this could get worse before it gets better. Arthel.
Not good to hear. Okay, Will Carr, thank you very much for that report. Meanwhile, one of the 5 people struck by lightning at a New York park yesterday has died. A hospital official confirming the 50-year-old man died early this morning. Now, all of the victims were gathered around a bench at a park in Poughkeepsie when a fast-moving thunderstorm rolled in and they were hit by a bolt of lightning. 2 more victims remain in intensive care.
Now, some Olympic athletes are finding themselves facing an entirely different opponent, the water. You know, serious health concerns are being raised after authorities plan to drain a pool that mysteriously turned green. And take a look at that. The city's polluted bay, the site of sailing and rowing competitions. Well, it's so dirty that at least one competitor has become sick. Belgian star Evie van Aker, well, she contracted a serious bacterial intestinal infection while training there in July, and she's still struggling to get back in top form. Steve Harrigan has the very latest on this controversy live from Rio de Janeiro. Hi, Steve.
Eric, the pools have gotten gradually worse in the Olympic Stadium as the week has gone on. Originally blue, by Wednesday they were a light green, and some of them so murky as of Friday morning that the actual practice for the divers had to be canceled. Athletes also complaining not just of the murky green color, but also of the smell. And it transferred from the diving pool to the water polo pool, where they dumped so much chlorine in. Athletes were complaining they couldn't open their eyes underwater. This would pose a serious problem, say, for the synchronized swimmers who actually have to see what they're doing with each other underwater. So the plan is now to drain 1 million gallons of water from one pool so they will be able to compete. What's causing the problem? There's a lot of controversy and a lot of different explanations. Is it algae? Is it a shortage of chemicals? Is it too many people in the pools? We've heard all those explanations, including the statement from a Rio spokesman who said chemistry is not an exact science. It's a real problem, though, for the outdoor athletes, and particularly a dangerous one. There's been a documentation of the levels of bacteria in the water where some of these outdoor sports are held, and now the first victim, a woman sailor from Belgium, expected to medal in these games. She has a severe intestinal infection after an event on Wednesday, and her coach is putting the blame for that infection squarely on the polluted water where she is competing. Eric, back to you.
All right, Steve, I think that's got to be the quote of the day, saying chemistry is not an exact science when they can't figure out what that stuff is. All right, Steve, thank you.
A Fox News alert, we are getting multiple reports of shots fired at the scene of a mall in Raleigh, North Carolina. WRAL in Raleigh reporting that witnesses heard gunfire inside. Now, no word yet on whether anyone has been injured or what type of possible shooting it was. Police not allowing anyone to go in or out of the mall. They're telling drivers to avoid the area, and we will continue to bring you more information as it comes into our newsroom.
Meanwhile, Arthel, you know, it's only August, still some time to go before November, but some pundits already predict that Donald Trump may be running out of time to win over those voters in the key swing states. Polls are showing a very close race in Florida, but what about those other battleground turfs? And is the Sunshine State really that important? We'll have a fair and balanced debate looking at the battleground states ahead.
Plus, Chicago police released reports filed in connection with the fatal shooting of 18-year-old Paul O'Neill. What the documents reveal. That's next.
And a day of the dock nearly turns deadly when an alligator attacks.
This woman apparently dropped a can into the water. She was standing on the dock, dropped a can into the water, and as she reached in to retrieve the can, that's when she was bitten by the alligator.
Time now for a quick check of the headlines. Newly released reports revealing more information about the fatal shooting of an unarmed black teen by a Chicago police officer last month. A police officer saying Paul O'Neill, quote, reached for his waistband before he was shot. A Florida woman is in critical condition after she is attacked by an alligator in the Everglades. Officials say the woman dropped a can from a dock and the gator grabbed her hand when she tried to pick it up. Star Wars fans in mourning. Kenny Baker, the actor who starred as the beloved character R2-D2 in 6 Star Wars films, has died. A family member confirming his death after a long illness. Kenny Baker was 81 years old.
Well, meanwhile, new polls are showing a pretty difficult road ahead for Republican nominee Donald Trump in some of the key battleground states. Real Clear Politics, which takes an average of all polls, show Mr. Trump falling behind his Democratic rival Hillary Clinton in several states, including Colorado, Michigan, and New Hampshire. You can take a look at comparing those main battleground swing states that are so important. Mr. Trump is behind basically in all of them. So how critical will those states be when it comes to the election? Mr. Trump, though, is within striking distance in North Carolina and Ohio. And the Buckeye State, of course, traditionally has been a reliable indicator of how the election will go. But now it appears that he may have some difficulty in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. He's putting a lot on Pennsylvania. What will happen? Angela McGlowan joins us, a Fox News political analyst, and Doug Schoen, a former advisor to President Clinton and Fox News contributor. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Let me start with you.
Sure.
Pennsylvania. Donald Trump says it's a must-win state. To win the White House, he's got to win it. But so far, he hasn't broken like 45%. Why not? And what do you predict?
Sure. Well, he's been losing in Pennsylvania, Eric. Upscale Republicans, suburban Republicans around Philadelphia, those with college educations, and the independents haven't broken to him in big enough numbers. He is breaking into the Secretary of State's support in Western Pennsylvania with working class Democrats and independents without college educations. But frankly, as you correctly point out, Eric, at only 45%, and with the margin this week getting as high as 8, 9, or 10 points in Pennsylvania, it's out of striking distance, and his math doesn't work unless he wins Pennsylvania.
Angela, is it too early to, have the death knell on this when you're looking at these type of polls?
Of course, it's too early. It's an eternity away before Election Day. And, Doug, you've heard of the October surprise. We're not in October yet. I think that Mr. Trump
Are you saying that Donald Trump's going to have an October surprise plan?
I'm not saying that, Doug. I'm not trying to make news here. I'm just trying to analyze what's going on politically. Having said that, have you ever heard of the saying, Doug, money is power? Well,
but
the more
Hillary
money,
Clinton's outspending it.
Hold on. The more money the government has, the more power it has over you. What Trump's Trump card is, no pun intended, is talking about how he wants to give the power back to the American people. He wants to cut taxes, to talk about his policy. But if he continues to go down this tirade, lying Hillary, and talk about other things, he will lose, Doug.
So, Angela, what does he have to do? I mean, how does he try to turn that around?
He has to talk about policy. Look, he wants to eliminate the death tax. I'm from Mississippi. People have to sell the farm if they inherit the farm to pay for the taxes on the farm. Donald Trump wants to give the American people more money in their pocket to spend because they know better than what Big Brother government knows. If he talks about that plainly, like I just did, because it's about jobs and the economy and national security, if he starts talking about policy, we'll have a better chance.
Doug, do you think it's possible for him to just stick to policy when you don't know what's going to come out of his mouth?
Well, first, let me say Angela is exactly right. If he talks policy, he'll do better. To your question, Eric, so far the evidence is pretty clear. He can't or won't do it. And the third thing is, Angela's right, and I think she is, if money's power, given that the Secretary of State has spent $50 to $100 million on ads in these swing states to no expenditures from Donald Trump, it's clear the numbers are reflecting the impact of those dollars. And if that continues, and the Clintons have pledged up to $2 billion, that's $2 billion between the super PACs and her campaign, I think he's in a tough shape, Eric, and I think Angela would agree.
Well, Doug, I'm going to take a different spin on that because she's such a flawed candidate. That's why she has to spend so much money.
It may be, but she's doing it.
Yeah, she's advertising the Olympics, and apparently Donald Trump doesn't have anything on the air in the Olympics. But a minute ago I talked about policy, because he always comes out with something. Now he's saying, basically, telling folks that if he loses, especially in Pennsylvania, it's because of voter fraud, because people cheated. People will have voted multiple times. Here's what he said.
If we get cheated out of this election, if we get cheated out of a win in Pennsylvania, which is such a vital state, especially when I know what's happening here, folks. I know she can't beat what's happening here. The only way they can beat it, in my opinion, and I mean this 100%, if in certain sections of the state they cheat, okay?
Doug, quickly, I've covered voter fraud here at Fox News. We've seen elections stolen in New York, Kentucky. We've seen problems also in Pennsylvania. What is he talking about?
Well, if you've got a 10-point margin or so, it's pretty hard to steal that much. That being said, it's pretty hard to talk about voter fraud as a guaranteed result when nothing has happened and no ballots have been cast. Let's hope that there is vigilance on all sides to make sure it doesn't happen.
Angela's here raising false fears.
Look, Donald Trump likes winners. Remember when he made that statement, I don't like losers? He's speaking defeat before we even defeat it. Instead of talking about cheating, Mr. Trump, talk about Republican policy. Talk about how you're going to create a more prosperous America. And stop doing the blame game. That's liberals. That's what they do. Deflect
Angela
and
couldn't
divide.
be more right, except liberals win. They don't play the blame game.
Yo, you guys do it all the time. Talk to President Obama.
Well, you know, we're going to see what happens with if he can stick to policy, as Angela says and as Doug predicts. But we'll see if that's possible.
We'll see.
We'll give him 24 hours.
Absolutely.
Angela and Doug,
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Of course. And we have a program for you. Republican vice presidential nominee Mike Pence, who is going to sit down to talk with Fox News Sunday anchor Chris Wallace. That's on Fox News Sunday tomorrow. Take a look.
Do you believe that Hillary Clinton was involved in a pay-to-play arrangement as Secretary of State with big donors to the Clinton Foundation?
Well, it looks that way more and more every day, doesn't it? The new emails that have been made public just in the last week seem to make a direct connection between favors done by State Department officials and major foreign donors to the Clinton Foundation. But the American people have a right to know.
Well, it's a fascinating, in-depth, exclusive interview with Governor Pence. You're going to want to see it. Check your local listings for your Fox station where you live, and it's also will be here on the Fox News Channel a couple of times tomorrow. So just keep your dial on Fox News Channel. You can see everything.
We'll be on the watch for it. Meanwhile, a terrifying scene on a train in Switzerland. Police trying to figure out why a man went on the attack and whether he acted alone.
And White House officials apparently discussing how to respond to those hacking attacks on the Democratic groups, asking who is behind it, what do they want, and how do you punish them?
Police are trying to figure out why a man set a fire on a train in Switzerland and then stabbed several passengers. Authorities say the 27-year-old suspect was armed with at least one knife and poured out a flammable liquid. At least 6 people are now being treated for burns and stab wounds, including a 6-year-old child. The attack happening as the train approached the town of Salez. Police say they don't know the man's motive, but so far believe the incident is not terror-related.
Meanwhile, Arthur, there are new developments in the hacking attack on the Democratic National Committee. Those hackers now releasing personal cell phone numbers and private email addresses of Democratic lawmakers. You know, it's amazing they get this stuff. You may recall the hackers dumped nearly 20,000 emails of DNC officials just before the Democratic National Convention last month. For more on this, Rich Edson joins us from Washington with the very latest on this newest hack. Man, Rich, I mean, it seems that they almost say they have like full access to the computer system. systems.
You know, Eric, hackers continue releasing to the public private stolen information and emails of Democratic operatives. And last night, a hacker identifying as Guccifer 2.0 posted online the personal contact information of nearly 200 current and former Democratic congressmen. In a letter to her Democratic colleagues on the issue released this afternoon, House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi writes, quote, "I was in the air flying from Florida to California when the news broke. Upon landing, I have received scores of mostly obscene and sick calls, voicemails, and text messages. Please be careful not to allow your children or family members to answer your phone or read incoming text messages." Pelosi says Democrats are hosting a conference call next hour to discuss the issue, and she's urging them to change their phone numbers and email addresses. This latest posting is the result of a hack into the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. It's an organization charged with electing Democrats to the House. The DCCC says it is cooperating with federal law enforcement agencies investigating the hack after reports there were hackers much more successful than they first thought. Pelosi says she suspects Russians are responsible. Just ahead of last month's Democratic convention, WikiLeaks posted emails stolen from the Democratic National Committee. They showed DNC favoritism to Hillary Clinton over Bernie Sanders in their race for the Democratic nomination. Several senior DNC officials lost their jobs, including Chair Debbie Wasserman Schultz. In response, the DNC has announced a new cybersecurity task force and says it hired an outside firm to protect its computer network. Eric and Arthel, back to you.
All right, Rich, thanks so much. And you can bet probably there'll be more on the way. Thank you. Arthel?
And Rich and Eric, meanwhile, the Obama administration reportedly discussing whether to impose new sanctions against Russia following those hacking attacks on Democratic groups. U.S. intelligence agencies say the cyber attack is believed to have been carried out by Russian-affiliated hackers. The White House already imposed economic sanctions after Russia's annexation of Crimea. Marvin Kalb is here. He is the author of Imperial Gamble, Putin, Ukraine, and the New Cold War. Also, the former moderator Right. And to your point, there is now Putin strategically is making nice with Erdogan. And Erdogan, Turkey, they're supposed to be U.S. allies, and that relationship has been on ice. However, I want to break some news here that President Biden, Vice President Biden, is going to be heading to Turkey on August 24th to try to mend the fences with Turkey. I guess that, considering what we're discussing here is that, the administration is well aware of the conundrum over there, and it's like a tight ball of various nerves, and if you cut the wrong thing, you could mess up the whole situation.
Well, that's exactly right, and that's what I mean about Putin having any number of options that he can play. Turkey is another option. But that's an easy one for him to play, because obviously he needs Turkey as much as Turkey needs Russia and Turkey needs the U.S. Erdogan will now play one off against the other. And the idea that the vice president goes there, great, but he shouldn't expect Turkey immediately to shift allegiance or influence or whatever toward the West. Turkey is right smack in the middle now, and the man running Turkey is unpredictable. You never know where he's going to turn.
I was just going to say, can you trust Erdogan? Okay.
No, I don't think so.
All right, Marvin Cow, thank you so much. We have to leave it there. Thank you very much.
Take care.
Eric?
Well, there you know, he risked life and limb to climb Trump Tower. Did you see him doing that the other day? Well, man, oh man, it was kind of scary. Do not try that. He went up there to meet Donald Trump. Well, now, as you know, he's under arrest, but apparently authorities say he's not talking. We'll tell you coming up more about who he is, why he says he did it, and what could happen in court. Our legal panel is here on this fascinating case.
Guarantee that it is in your interest to honor this request. Believe me, if my purpose was not significant, I would not risk my life pursuing it. The reason I climbed your tower was to get your attention. If I had sought this via conventional means, I would be much less likely to have success.
Oh, that's 19-year-old Stephen Regatta in a message that he posted on YouTube, posting that just before he used those large suction cups to scale the side of Trump Tower in Manhattan earlier this week. Now, Stephen is charged with reckless endangerment and criminal trespassing. Thankfully, he wasn't hurt. No one else was hurt either. But you know that stunt? Not only it caused chaos outside of Trump's campaign headquarters and office, but from very real, very scary moments for all of us as the nation watched this live on television.
At no time did he express that he wanted to hurt anybody. His sole intention was to meet with Mr. Trump. It took 3 hours to get him in custody, and upon getting him in custody, he explained the same thing, that he wanted Mr. Trump's attention, and he wanted a meeting with him.
New York's finest did a fabulous job on the 21st floor, saving his life and bringing him safely in. So what does Stephen face? Joining us now is our legal panel. David Schwartz, a defense attorney, and former prosecutor. Kirsten Wilson is a trial attorney. Stephen Regatta, it's not his original name. He was Stephen Ryan, changed it a few years ago. He's now in Bellevue Hospital here in Manhattan undergoing psychiatric evaluation. He is charged with reckless endangerment, a felony, and criminal trespass. So what is, David, the procedure? What's going on with him now? What can we expect?
Right. Well, he'll be evaluated, and then after his evaluation, he needs to be arraigned on the criminal charges. And these are just misdemeanor charges. These aren't felony charges. They're misdemeanors, and he'll have his arraignment. And I'm not sure he's going to plead insanity and I do think he'll be found competent to stand trial.
Why is that?
Well, it's a very high burden to try to declare someone incompetent to stand trial. But the charges are just minor charges. So if I'm the defense attorney, I'm going to let it go through the system and get a disposition.
Well, Kirsten, if you're on YouTube, in that hood, saying you're going to climb Trump Tower, you want to get a message to Mr. Trump? Email, call, drop a letter in the mailbox.
Yeah, I understand the practicality of what David's saying, but the reality is the courts and the police department have already triggered this evaluation of him. Somebody has said there's obviously a psychological issue. But David's correct. To determine competency, to determine that someone is incompetent, it's a pretty high burden. They have to really not understand who the players are in a courtroom, what they're charged with, what the process is, not be able to communicate effectively. And so I'm imagining that's part of what's going on at Bellevue, potentially maybe looking at insanity, but typically that's triggered as a defense by the defense attorney.
Well, he certainly appears articulate and able to eloquently describe his goal and his mission and wanting to see Donald Trump for whatever, secret reason that was. So by what you're saying is that would not trigger a mental defense.
It doesn't have to. It still is a linear thought process. I mean, you're looking at the fact that he created a YouTube video knowing what he was going to do the next day. He had the tools. He made the trip up. He actually went through with his plan. When they tried to get him into the window, he came in through the window. He was actually maneuvering to try and avoid these people. So as much as it may seem odd to most of us, what he did actually had a very linear thought process to it. And that's the sort of thing that the mental health experts are going to look at.
And man, David, this takes a lot of planning. You got to know how these suction cups work. Right. You got to think of this. And this is what we know about him. 19 years old, went to Langley High School. His friends, according to reports, say he's Republican conservative views. He had been an intern at the Fairfax County Republican Party at some point. And his parents apparently said that he became obsessed with the internet, ran away at one point, then came home. Then they come home from vacation, and the car's gone, and they don't know where he is. And he drove up to New York with, his parents not knowing anything.
Look, if I'm the defense attorney on this case, I'm going to certainly use the mental illness defense, but not in the insanity context. I'm going to use it to try to get a disposition, a non-criminal disposition of the case, which involves mental health counseling. And that's what I'm going to go after in this case. And really, these charges are not significant charges in the grand scheme of things.
Do you think he faces jail time, or would that possibly be the way this will end?
I don't think he's going to face jail time at all. I think a disposition most likely is going to involve some sort of ongoing counseling, as recommended potentially by the experts in the report.
We've seen this before. People like a guy tried to parachute into the Statue of Liberty. Philippe Petit climbed between the two towers of the World Trade Center. So
this is New York City criminal court. It's a free-for-all. Trust. This is not even these aren't the harshest facts the judge has seen. He's seen a lot.
Yep. You spend some time in New York City criminal court. You can't make it up.
Well, and his age is going to play into it as well, as you said. I mean, he's a really young kid.
Yeah, well, I certainly hope for the best for him, that he gets whatever help that he needs and can deal with that. And our heart goes out to his parents, because they must be going through it.
Absolutely.
All right, David Kirsten, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you,
Eric.
Arthel?
Okay, guys. Well, victims of the Orlando nightclub shooting texted friends and relatives from inside the club, but could they have received help faster if they would have been able to text 911? More on the push to change the way we reach emergency services.
If somebody's, inside their house, or if they're in the trunk of a car and they don't want somebody to hear them, they can send a text message and we can still provide assistance to them.
Calling 911 for help may not always be an option, and now a new nationwide push is underway to make it possible to text the emergency line as well. Laura Engel has more now on the state where text 911 is already being used.
Calling 911 in an emergency is not always possible if you are in a dangerous situation where being overheard could bring you serious harm. But texting 911 could save your life.
If somebody's, inside their house, or if they're in the trunk of a car and they don't want somebody to hear them, they can send a text message and we can still provide assistance to them.
But text to 911 is not available everywhere. The service is only operating in parts of 36 states and Puerto Rico based on a call center's capability to accept texts. As of mid-July, text to 911 became available in all of New Jersey, where some lawmakers say the service is an important part of the public safety toolkit, especially when you consider situations like the Orlando, Florida nightclub shooting, when people were hiding and trying to send messages for help.
If you're an active shooter, you can imagine we're getting live information coming in from a text 911 about how many people are in the room, how many shooters there are, if anybody's hurt.
Many major cities like New York still don't have the technology because it requires major infrastructure work, including swapping out the current wire system to a digital one, which city leaders say could take millions of dollars and 2 years to complete. The FCC requires mobile providers to allow customers to text to 911, but because not all call centers can accept the messages, groups like the National Emergency Number Association have some concerns.
My number one concern is this false perception of your ability to text to 911. The second concern that I have is that there needs to be leadership in communities across the country, state level, and even in Congress to ensure that texting is available for all consumers.
And unless spelled out, texting in an emergency doesn't provide the detailed location information that a landline does, which is why dispatchers say call when you can, text when you can't. Laura Engel, Fox News.
Now we're getting some more information and video about the severe flooding that's been going on this weekend down south that has so far left at least 2 people dead. We're getting more video of those dramatic rescues in Louisiana, a state that has especially been hard hit. Crews pulled a woman and her dog from a car near Baton Rouge.
Her dog. Get my dog. Get my dog now. I'll go down. Hang on.
That is so harrowing, and your heart goes out to her, and it just shows how dangerous floodwaters can be, especially when you don't know it. Thankfully, she was saved, and they saved her dog. And there are more stories like this coming out of Louisiana today. We will bring that to you later on through the next hour. Thank God they got them.
Oh my gosh, okay. Also coming up at 6, a major win in the war against ISIS, 2,000 hostages freed when rebels liberate an important city in Syria. Can there be more? And credit card debt is on the rise in America, reaching levels not seen since the 2008 crash. How you can keep yourself from falling victim, that's ahead at 6 o'clock Eastern, right here on the Fox News Channel.
Discover Kia's quality at the Top Quality Sales Event. We're celebrating with great deals on the versatile Sportage, ranked Mint Hour, the 2016 IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus. Visit Kia.com to learn about our limited time lease and purchase offers and to see how Kia quality ranks versus the competition. Then hurry down to the Kia Top Quality Sales Event today.
Yep, it's termites.
Oh, get rid of them.
Oh, no, I'm not an exterminator. I'm a pest monitor. I only let you know when there's a problem. There's a problem. Bye.
Why monitor a problem if you don't fix it? That's why free credit monitoring isn't enough to protect you from identity theft. At LifeLock, we not only alert you to identity threats. If you have a problem, we'll spend up to $1 million on lawyers and experts who'll work to fix it. LifeLock. Join starting at $9.99 a month.
See me.
See me. Don't stare at me.
See me. See me. See me to know that psoriasis is just something that I have. I'm not contagious. See me to know that I won't stop until I find what works.
Discover Cosentyx, a different kind of medicine for moderate to severe plaque psoriasis, proven to help the majority of people find clear or almost clear skin. 8 out of 10 people saw 75% skin clearance at 3 months, while the majority saw 90% clearance. Do not use if you are allergic to Cosentyx. Before starting, you should be tested for tuberculosis. An increased risk of infections and lowered ability to fight them may occur. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms such as fever, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough. Or if you have received a vaccine or plan to. If you have inflammatory bowel disease, tell your doctor if symptoms develop or worsen. Serious allergic reactions may occur.
See me. See me. See me on my way.
Find clear skin and a clearer path forward. For a different kind of medicine, ask your dermatologist about Cosentyx.
I'm Andy, and I lost 30 pounds on Nutrisystem.
Listen up, guys. Want to shed a few pounds? Got a beer belly going on? Can't fit into your pants? I got one word for you. Nutrisystem.
I'm Essex, and I lost 43 pounds on Nutrisystem.
I'm Trevor, and I lost 60 pounds on Nutrisystem.
Lose weight fast with Nutrisystem's all-new Turbo 10. You can lose weight, too. Real guys, real results.
I'm Michael, and I lost 50 pounds on Nutrisystem.
Put down the pie, pick up the phone, and get with the program today. Lose up to 10 pounds in your first month and 5 inches overall. You'll love it. Money back guaranteed.
The food was delicious.
If you're like me and you like to eat, this is what you get to do.
This is perfect for men, especially guys who don't want to cook.
So get off the couch and order your 28-day Nutrisystem plan right now. Get 1 week of all-new Turbo Shakes free and 1 week of NutriCrush Shakes free.
It's not that hard. You eat the food, you lose the weight.
Call 877-282-DIET and get the all-new Turbo 10 with 14 shakes free.
It's been a wild ride to Jordan and Chelsea's wedding, but thanks to Booking.com, everything turned out perfect. Weird, but perfect.
When you've been making delicious natural cheese for over 100 years like Kraft has, you learn a lot about people's tastes.
Honey, what do you want for dinner tonight?
Oh, whatever you're making.
Triple cheddar stuffed sliders.
Sold.
A Fox News alert, the NYPD just wrapping a news conference a few moments ago about a troubling shooting outside of a mosque in the borough of Queens. An imam has been killed after being shot in the head while walking home from afternoon prayers from the mosque in the Ozone Park neighborhood when he and a second man were gunned down by a lone shooter. Now, the second victim shot in the chest. He's in critical condition. Police telling reporters there is no motive at this time and that there is no indication that the men were targeted for their religious beliefs. At this time, they're not threatening this shooting or treating this shooting as a hate crime. No arrests have been made. Witnesses telling reporters the shooter, wearing a dark blue shirt and carrying a large handgun, fled the scene. We will bring you more details as we get them.
And there is new controversy for Donald Trump tonight. The Republican nominee to support an event he will lose. And I'm Eric Shawn. Welcome to a brand new hour of America's election headquarters.
Hello, Sean. Hello, everyone. I'm Marthel Neville. Well, the most recent remarks coming on the heels of Trump's controversial comments earlier this week, calling President Obama the founder of ISIS. Peter Ducey joins us live from Fairfield, Connecticut, where Mr. Trump will be holding a rally in about an hour.
And, Arthel, what you see behind us here in Fairfield, Connecticut, is that Donald Trump really can attract a crowd, even in a state that is so blue it hasn't gone for a Republican in a presidential election since 1988, almost 3 decades ago. Now, the Trump team kicked off this weekend ahead of this rally by pushing back against the idea that Clinton releasing her tax returns on Friday afternoon changes the race in any kind of a meaningful way, with the communications director, Jason Miller, telling us that, quote, Hillary Clinton has turned over the only records nobody wants to see from her. The American public wants to see the 33,000 emails she deleted to obstruct an FBI investigation. The Trump campaign is also defending itself today after a New York Times article suggested that Trump's advisors are having a difficult time keeping him on message and that Trump is growing scared of a potential loss in November. So the nominee himself wrote on Twitter this afternoon, quote, I am truly enjoying myself while running for president. The people of our country are amazing. Great numbers on November 8th. And the campaign is also displaying a new united front with the party's brass, rolling out Reince Priebus to warm up the crowd in Pennsylvania, dismissing any talk of drama behind closed doors.
Don't believe the garbage you read. I tell you, the Republican Party, all of you, we're going to put him in the White House and save this country together.
And Trump is also asking his supporters to be election observers to stop the results from being rigged, which he told voters in Pennsylvania yesterday is the only thing that could stop him there.
She can't beat what's happening here. The only way they can beat it, in my opinion, and I mean this 100%, if in certain sections of the state they cheat.
Trump hit a fundraiser this afternoon, and he should be on his way here for a rally that's set to start next hour. With everything that's been swirling around his campaign, it should be a very newsy Saturday night. Arthel?
We'll look forward to that. I mean, it's a big crowd, very enthusiastic already, and Mr. Trump is not even there yet. All right, Peter Ducey, thank you very much. And to the Democratic nominee now, Hillary Clinton, releasing her 2015 tax return. Secretary Clinton and her husband made about $10 million last year and paid a federal tax rate of about 34%. Brian Yennis, live in our New York City newsroom with more. Brian?
Hi, Arthel. Well, Republicans and Donald Trump want to keep the attention on Hillary Clinton's emails, and in response, the Clinton campaign is trying to keep voters' attention on Trump's tax returns. Hillary Clinton Clinton's running mate, Senator Tim Kaine, is attacking Trump for not releasing his tax returns. Speaking at St. Anselm College in New Hampshire earlier today, Kaine said Trump doesn't want people to see his tax returns because he is hiding something, saying the Republican nominee likely doesn't donate to charity as generously as he claims and has not paid taxes.
Every president since Richard Nixon, and including Richard Nixon. Now, he was not known for the most elevated ethical standards, but I will say, even Richard Nixon released his tax returns to the public when he was running for president because he said, as has every major party nominee of both parties since, the American public have a right to see my tax returns.
Even on Twitter, the Clinton camp tweeting a poll question asking people to weigh in as to why they think Trump won't release his returns. So far, the leading reason is Trump inflates his wealth. The Clintons released their tax returns yesterday and point out that they have 40 years of tax returns available to the public. The Kaines released 10 years worth of their returns. In response to the email controversy, former President Bill Clinton saying last night the notion that his wife sent emails with marked classified materials at the time is, quote, bull.
Well, the FBI director said when he testified before Congress, he had to amend his previous day's statement that she had never received any emails marked classified. They saw two little notes with a C on it. This is the biggest load of bull I ever heard.
As Fox News first reported in June, the FBI found 3 emails marked classified at the time they were sent from Clinton's private server. Arthel?
Okay, Brian Yennis. Thanks so much, Brian. No problem. Meanwhile, people in a Syrian city cheering and celebrating today after U.S.-backed rebel forces liberated it from ISIS. The terror group ruling over Manbij for 2 years, using it as a place to recruit and train its fighters. John Huddy has more now from our Mideast Bureau. John?
Well, Arthel, this is being called a major victory for U.S.-backed forces in Syria. The city of Manbij was an ISIS stronghold sitting along a major supply route for the terror group. So taking control of the city not only cuts off that supply route, but also helps pave the way to Raqqa, ISIS's de facto capital in Syria. Take a look as people celebrated in the streets today in Manbij, including the 2,000 civilians that ISIS took hostage, using them as human shields. Manbij was really an example of ISIS's brutal reign. Men were not allowed to be clean-shaven, women forced to cover up their whole bodies, including their hands, and if found in violation, at the minimum severely beaten, and in many cases executed. So today, we've seen the video and pictures of men cutting off their beards, women burning burqas and their niqabs, and the emotional pictures of some of those hostages embracing female Kurdish fighters. The fight for Manbij lasted a vicious and brutal 73 days. Hundreds of people were killed, men, women, and children. The city devastated. But it's a major victory, both symbolically and strategically. Manbij is close to the Turkish border, about 23 miles, and it sits along a main road that leads to both Aleppo to the west and Raqqa to the southeast. So again, taking control of Manbij not only helps pave the way for those U.S.-backed fighters to Raqqa, but also helps cut off that transportation and supply corridor used by ISIS to smuggle weapons, equipment, and foreign fighters from Europe. Arthel.
Very strategic. John Huddy, thank you very much. And by the way, we will have more on this story coming up in about 20 minutes when we talk to Ambassador John Bolton. Eric?
Well, I thought, meanwhile, Vice President Joe Biden is planning a trip to Turkey just weeks after that failed coup attempt rocked that country. President Erdogan, as you know, has cracked down severely on his nation and has met with Russian President Vladimir Putin, calling him a dear friend. Well, Mr. Biden's office tells Fox News the vice president will make that trip on August 24th. And it comes, of course, between rising tensions between the U.S. and that country, as Turkish officials are asking the U.S. to extradite that Muslim cleric who they say was behind the coup attempt, though they deny it. The U.S. is refusing to hand him over without more evidence of any involvement. And others are asking, are we about to surrender control over the Internet? Well, technology groups are asking Congress to prevent the Obama administration from giving an international board power over Internet domain names. You know, critics are saying that the move could give foreign governments too much control over the web. Garrett Tenney has more from Washington.
For the last 18 years, the U.S. government has controlled what's called the domain name system worldwide through a nonprofit group called the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers, or ICANN for short. This group manages domain names like .com, .gov, .pizza, or .ninja. And yes, that is a real thing. By the end of next month, though, the Obama administration is planning to end its contract with ICANN, giving up control of the domain naming responsibility to a global board of directors. Critics argue this move will allow governments like Russia, China, and Iran to have greater control over a key part of the internet and potentially the ability to stifle free speech. Now, a coalition of technology groups and conservatives are pushing Congress to sue the Obama administration. In a letter to congressional leaders this week, 26 tech organizations wrote in part, without robust safeguards, internet governance could fall under the sway of governments hostile to freedoms protected by the First Amendment. Twice now, Congress has passed appropriation bills that prohibit any tax dollars from being used for the transition, and both times the president signed those bills into law. But now the administration says it's not bound by those bills and plans to move ahead. In a letter to lawmakers this week, Assistant Commerce Secretary Larry Strickling wrote in part, free expression exists and flourishes online not because of perceived U.S. government oversight over the domain name system or because of any asserted special relationship that the United States has with ICANN. It exists and is protected when stakeholders work together to make decisions. Unless the president changes his mind or a lawsuit is brought, the U.S. will hand over control of ICANN by the end of next month. In Washington, I'm Garrett Tenney, Fox News.
Okay, Garrett. Well, new revelations in the Hillary Clinton email controversy, putting the spotlight on a top aide and her simultaneous work at the State Department and the Clinton Foundation. How all of this will impact Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign, that's up ahead.
And we'll also have the latest on that deadly and harrowing flooding in Louisiana. You won't forget this if you see some of the video that we've been getting in here at the Fox News channel. Heart-stopping, dramatic rescues that vividly show just how treacherous floodwaters can be.
It was scary. It was scary for a while. I didn't know what to expect. A lot of debris kept floating by me and hitting me and stuff. And I thought the current was so bad last night for a while because of the rain. I thought I was gone for a minute.
When we started.
A Fox News alert, the second victim of that shooting at a mosque in Queens, New York, has died. He was shot in the chest and rushed to the hospital after being gunned down along with the mosque's imam, who was also fatally shot. The pair had been walking home from afternoon prayers at the mosque in the Ozone Park neighborhood. Police are now looking for a lone shooter. They say there is no motive at this time and that there is no indication that the men were targeted for their religious beliefs. At this time, they are not treating this shooting as a hate crime. No arrests have been made. Witnesses telling reporters the shooter was wearing a dark blue shirt and carrying a large handgun. He fled the scene. The shooter fled the scene. We will bring you more details as we have them.
Out of that horrible flooding in Louisiana, that state continues to be under a state of emergency. Some relentless rain has triggered massive flooding there and throughout the Deep South. It has claimed the lives of at least 2 people so far. And crews have already rescued about 1,000 people from their homes and stranded cars. We've seen some dramatic and harrowing rescues of folks who were suddenly caught in those dangerous floodwaters, and there is no sign of any let-up yet. Forecasters saying even more rain is expected throughout the rest of the evening. For the very latest, let's go to Will Carr now, who's in Dallas with more. Hi, Will.
Evacuations and rescues are underway in Louisiana after days of torrential rainfall that has now swamped the state, causing widespread flooding.
The first responders had to come rescue us out the house because the water was that high.
The slow-moving storm is expected to dump more heavy rain throughout the weekend. Governor John Bel Edwards declaring a state of emergency, saying residents advised to evacuate should do so quickly.
We have record levels of flooding along rivers and creeks. And because these are record floods, we don't know how wide the water is going to get in those areas.
It's been flooding progressively more and more as the day goes on. I mean, it's just getting worse.
The Louisiana National Guard now going home to home to save residents and pets stranded in waist-high water. And rescue crews continue to search for a car swept away in a report of a missing person.
Our helicopters are primarily they're in active search and rescue right now. We're trying to coordinate with the officials on the ground to make sure that we get to the critical areas.
Floodwaters even impacting the governor's mansion, the basement flooding overnight. There's going to be rain in this region for the next 36 hours. The rivers and creeks across the area are expected to crest at record levels, and the worst flooding may not be over yet. Eric.
Thanks, Will. You know, the governor calls it a major disaster. All right, Dale?
Okay. Eric, well, Hillary Clinton's email controversy continues to dog her presidential campaign. We're now learning a top Clinton aide assisted the Clinton Foundation in hiring while she worked as a senior official in the State Department. This now raising more questions about the links between the foundation and Mrs. Clinton's tenure at the State Department. Here to talk about this and how it's impacting Hillary Clinton's campaign is Betsy Woodruff, a political reporter for the Daily Beast. Betsy, good to see you here. So out the gate, is there anything that Hillary Clinton can do to put this email controversy behind her?
You know, the thing that reporters, myself included, are most eager for is for Clinton to finally have a real-life press conference, just go before the media and take questions for an extended period of time from reporters from a number of outlets. She hasn't done that in upwards of a year, which has left many members of the press corps just scratching their heads. Of course, if she did that, she could answer a lot of the questions that remain unanswered about potential relationships and conflicts of interest between the Clinton Foundation and the State Department. The fact that she's been so media shy, first off, doesn't do much to build goodwill between her and the press corps. But second, it means that eventually when she does have to answer questions, it could potentially be quite close to the election and do even more damage than if she'd answered these questions earlier on.
And, you know, and some of the questions out there, I mean, is this more about Hillary Clinton being dishonest, or does it speak more to Clinton critics who say the Clintons think they can get away with anything? They're above the law.
I think one of the largest issues that these emails have raised is the possibility of growing, troubling corporate influence over the State Department and over how the U.S. government does foreign policy. That's why one of the emails in the latest batch that just got released is uniquely troubling. It suggested that there was kind of a culture of back scratching between the Clinton Foundation, its donors, and the State Department. A former Bill Clinton aide who worked at the Clinton Foundation emailed somebody in the State Department saying, please help out this person who's a Clinton Foundation donor. He's been good to us. I'm trying to call in a favor. The idea that corporations and corporate leaders would see the Clinton Foundation as a way of giving money and in exchange, potentially, hopefully, maybe getting favors from the State Department, even that perception is itself a problem and can undermine the U.S.'s diplomatic integrity.
And, you know, Betsy, as long as Mrs. Clinton can, you know, has such a huge advance over Donald Trump in the polls, I mean, will we see Hillary Clinton or the Clinton campaign, maybe they'll just ride it out for the next 86 days until Election Day?
I imagine that's what they're hoping for. The keep your head down strategy has served Hillary pretty well thus far. And of course, the reality is that these email stories, even though they damage her, don't necessarily do much to make her be viewed as a worse politician than Donald Trump. The most recent Fox News poll, I believe, from earlier this month, showed that about 61% of Americans said they didn't think they could trust Hillary Clinton. Meanwhile, 62% said the same thing about Donald Trump. So even though Trump and Republicans are going to try to use these stories to say you can't trust Hillary Clinton, it doesn't necessarily differentiate him from her, and that might be why some third-party candidates are getting the momentum that they're getting.
You know, but, you know, speaking of Trump and Hillary's emails, it's kind of like a cut over her eye. So the question is, can the Trump campaign get Trump to focus and stay on message and keep jabbing Hillary Clinton over her emails?
Yeah, exactly. And historically, Trump's ability to stay on message and zero in on what his advisors would like for him to zero in on is not particularly impressive. The fact that he told voters in Pennsylvania that the only way he could lose the state would be because of some sort of misconduct or fraud is really astonishing. Questioning the entire function, questioning whether or not the U.S. electoral process is functioning. I know that Trump aides, Trump confidants hear him say comments like that and think, why is he questioning the democratic process, instead of focusing in on Hillary and on the many vulnerabilities she has. The fact is, we're seeing new vulnerabilities over the course of this past week, and Trump has really struggled to zero in on those.
We leave it there. Betsy Woodruff. Thanks, Betsy.
Thank you.
Well, police continue to investigate a reported shooting that happened this afternoon at a North Carolina mall. How witnesses say they stayed safe until the cops could lead them out of the building.
Plus, thousands of people celebrating in Syria today after U.S.-backed rebels liberate a city from ISIS control. Ambassador John Bolton is next on what this means in the larger fight against the terror group. So we have an update on a developing story we've been following this afternoon, a reported shooting at a mall in North Carolina. Raleigh police say they have not found anyone with gunshot wounds and no suspects have been arrested. Witnesses described a chaotic scene after the shots were heard. Shoppers and employees say they hid in stores until police led them out.
May God salute you. You are our children. You are our heroes. You are the blood of our hearts. You are our eyes. Go out, ISIS.
Well, she and other people were celebrating in the streets after U.S.-backed forces recaptured the Syrian city of Manbij from the radical Islamic terrorists of ISIS. You know, that move comes after months of fighting and the killing of hundreds of soldiers and civilians there. The liberation of the city helping to separate ISIS from the Turkish border, and some think they could make it harder for the terrorist group to smuggle goods and more fighters into Syria. So what comes next in this development? Joining us is Ambassador John Bolton, former U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Senior Fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, and a Fox News contributor. Ambassador, good to see you this evening.
Glad to be with you, Eric.
Well, you know, we're told the residents were shaving their beards. They were smoking, because you can't do that under ISIS control. And they're actually burning burqas now that they've been freed from ISIS. So how significant do you think is this liberation of the city?
Well, I think it is a significant victory. It represents another loss for ISIS as part of the overall campaign. But I think that it's important to look at what else this tells us. There's no doubt ISIS can be defeated with the proper application of force. The real question is, why is it taking so long? Why have we been so unwilling, not unable, but unwilling as the United States to press this campaign more effectively? Moreover, according to press reports we've got, significant numbers of ISIS fighters were able to get out of Manbij before the town fell. And there's a real similarity to what just happened in Sirte in Libya, where a U.S. bombing campaign, by the way, the second U.S. bombing campaign in Libya in the last 5 years, it's true, brought Sirte back into the hands of the government and government-supported militias. But there, too, thousands of ISIS fighters got away. So what this indicates is that ISIS isn't so committed to death by suicide that they're going to get pounded into the dust before they execute a tactical withdrawal. And it's an indication, I think, of a much more coherent military strategy than we might have expected. All the while, this slow motion rolling back of ISIS-held territory permits them to redeploy, permits them to continue their internet and other propaganda activities to recruit and train terrorists in the United States and Europe. So, as I say, this really, it's a significant victory, no doubt about it, but it raises a lot of questions about why so long and why so slow.
And you also raised the point, those reports specifically say that about 500 of the ISIS fighters, I mean, they had a convoy. They just drove in vehicles and pickup trucks right out up the road, out of the city as they left. Remember the highway of death in Kuwait as the fleeing Iraqi soldiers of Saddam who stole? They stole stuff in Kuwait and they kidnapped Kuwaitis. They were just completely strafed. Wouldn't that send a message to ISIS if that happened instead of letting them go free?
Yeah, you have to wonder exactly what the U.S. role here was. This is a complicated battlefield, there's no doubt about it. And while we want to destroy ISIS, it seems to me we want to do it in a way that doesn't enhance other radical Islamicist groups, terrorists in Syria, anti-Assad forces to be sure, anti-ISIS forces, but no friends of the United States or the West, or enhancing the Baghdad government, which is a satellite of the Ayatollahs in Tehran. And there are a lot of complications here. We've got Erdogan, I think, trying to make up with Putin, maybe coming to a point where he'll no longer be part of the anti-Assad coalition. So there are a lot of moving parts here, and the slowness with which the U.S. and its surrogates in the region have been going after ISIS, simply give them more time to kill in the United States, Europe, and elsewhere.
Well, while we're at it, you talk about Erdogan. Let me raise this. He just met with Vladimir Putin, called him my dear friend, and Turkey is a member of NATO. So what happens?
Well, I'm deeply concerned about the direction Erdogan has been taking for a long time, but now, especially in the wake of the failed coup, he's arrested, at the latest count, over 16,000 supposed coup plotters. If they really were coup plotters, the coup would have succeeded. He is an authoritarian. He is an Islamist. And I think what he's trying to do is move Turkey out of the West orbit. At least that's his objective. But this meeting with Putin could be very significant, with negative consequences for the United States and the effort against Assad, perhaps even leading, although it may sound strange, to Russian, Turkish, Iranian cooperation across the region. There's a lot going on here. We're simply absent. The president is just not paying attention to it.
Well, Vice President Biden will be, because he's going to be there, we're told, later this month. We'll see if that keeps them in NATO, and especially keeps our air base that we have there operating, and how that works out. Ambassador, good to see you in the evening. I'll see you, as always, as you have been for, what, like 10 years? With us at 12 noon on Sundays, Eastern Time, here in the Fox News Channel.
Look forward to it.
See you tomorrow, as always. Thank you.
See you tomorrow, Ambassador. Thank you. So how many credit cards do you have in your wallet? Credit card debt is making a comeback in a big way. So how do you keep your credit score high and your card debt low? We'll talk to a financial planner about that next. Plus this.
Honesty here, Brendan, is the thing that's going to help you. Okay, no matter what you did, we can work through that. Okay? We can't make any promises, but we'll stand behind you no matter what you did.
Well, did you see Making a Murderer? Remember Brendan Dassey? Well, what police did here prompted a judge to throw out his murder conviction. It was a huge documentary. Now Brendan Dassey has his case overturned. We'll have the latest and reaction coming up. Well, I know the case was the focus of a major documentary series, and now a federal judge has overturned the conviction of Brendan Dassey. He's the teenager who was accused of helping his uncle, Stephen Avery, kill photographer Teresa Halbach back in 2005. You may recall this case was the subject of that widely seen Netflix documentary, Making a Murderer. The judge ruled that police did coerce the then 16-year-old boy to confess, quote, saying, "Having thoroughly reviewed the trial transcript, the court has no difficulty concluding that the admission of Dassey's confession was not a harmless error. These repeated false promises, when considered in conjunction with all relevant factors, most especially Dassey's age, intellectual deficits, and the absence of a supportive adult, render Dassey's confession involuntary under the 5th and 14th Amendments." Dassey's family says they're grateful and are right now in shock. So what does this mean for Stephen Avery, who continues to serve life in prison? Well, that at the moment seems to be unclear, but a ruling may not lead to a new trial for Avery, because we're told Dassey's confession wasn't used in the trial that convicted Avery. But Avery's current lawyer, in a statement, says that Avery is thrilled and happy that Brendan's conviction was overturned, and does expect Avery's murder conviction to eventually be overturned as well.
American household debt is on the rise, and the increase is driven by credit cards. Credit card balances are not as high as student loans and auto loans, but they have risen about $70 billion since 2014. And for those with low credit scores, credit card ownership has increased to its highest level, since 2008? When the meltdown happened. Pat Powell is here. She's a certified financial planner. I mean, a couple of questions off the bat. First of all, Pat, hi, nice to see you.
Hi, nice to be here.
Very good. Why are these credit card companies sort of on the prowl, and why are people getting into so much credit card debt?
Well, the first one, it's all about money. All right. Banks have a harder time making money today. It's a very low interest rate environment, and so they're looking for more and more places to lend, and so they've opened up the spigot again to lower and lower credit scores, and so we're back to where we were in 2008 as far as the ease with getting some of these credit cards.
So is that the ease that you're talking about? Is that what's alluring to the shoppers? Is like, here I go, got another credit card in my pocket. I want that blouse.
You know, there's a whole bunch of people out there that just can't help themselves. You know, if you give them credit, they will use it. Credit is a wonderful thing. Debt, not so wonderful.
Right.
And so we have this combination now of credit standards coming down for credit cards, and the spigots being turned on, and it hasn't ended well in the past. Not so sure it's going to end well again.
But, you know, truthfully, I mean, there are people who actually are underemployed, and they have to use credit cards, unfortunately, just to make ends meet. So what do you say to those people? First of all, how do they get from behind the 8 ball, if you will, under so much debt? And are there certain cards that would be better for them if they just have to use it for actual real life purposes?
Right. Well, when I've encountered people who, and we've talked about these issues, I'm a big believer in cash. Cash cannot get you in trouble. Of course. And so get the credit cards out of your wallet. Use cash. When the cash is gone, you're done. Right. Whatever it is, you are done. It's a wonderful discipline. It takes about 2 weeks for people to work it into the way they think, but it really does help. Start looking at all of your bills and see where are you really spending your money. One of the things I found with people who get themselves in trouble with debt is they have no idea how much debt they have. They don't keep their bills. If they make the minimum payment, they then get rid of the bill, so they don't really go back and look. They don't even know that there's things that are sneaking up on their bill, and they don't even, sometimes there's false charges on their credit cards they don't know anything about because they're not scrutinizing the bill. So get yourself in control of everything, and then things will start to happen for you.
Forced charges like what?
Suddenly something appears on your credit card from a vendor you don't recognize. And
how does that happen?
Well, sometimes it's out and out fraud. All right. Sometimes it's just an oopsie-daisy. Somebody accidentally was able to have enough information, and it just accidentally went to the wrong card. But many times it's out and out fraud, and it's so small. It's $10 a month on your credit card, but it's $10 a month on maybe trying to hit 1 million credit cards to see. So it can be major fraud with the big when you add it all up. But on yours, you're not going to the district attorney to complain about your $10.
Right. So even if you do, back to the people who use it for real life stuff, even if you feel like I can't do without this, I'm just trying to make ends meet, even then you could kind of look closely and find some expenses you possibly could cut out.
You can do better than you think you can.
Pat Powell, thank you very much. Good to see you.
Good
I like your fleur-de-lis earrings.
Thank you.
All right.
Go New Orleans.
Thank you. Hi, Eric.
All right, Pat, thanks. Well, all eyes are on Michael Phelps tonight as he competes in his final race of the Rio Olympic. Military dog and a veteran reuniting for good after 6 years apart.
There he is.
Mike Lemon and his dog Adam worked together as a K9 bomb team in the Middle East, and Adam staying behind to continue his missions after Mike came back to the U.S. And now that he's retired, Adam gets to go home with his old friend, the group mission K9 Rescue, helping to bring the pair back together again. I love that.
Oh, isn't that wonderful?
Yes, it is.
Oh, and our hats off to both Mike and to Adam for their service.
Absolutely.
Just spectacular.
Thanks so much for your time this evening. I'm Arthel Neville.
And I'm Eric Sean. We'll be back tomorrow at 12 noon Eastern, 4 o'clock, and 6 p.m. tomorrow night.
All Eastern.
3 hours
all day
of us tomorrow on the Fox News Channel. And thank you for spending your time with us here in the Fox News Channel. We know you have a choice around this country, but we're number one. Have a good day.
Laura Ingalls up next with the Fox Report. Enjoy your evening.